We went over the blessing of Shema Koleinu last week, and we just left a few things unfinished. And I'd like to just tie up those loose ends today before we go on to the Parsha. We mentioned that according to Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, the blessing of Shema Koleinu is a prayer for the acceptance of prayer. In other words, what we're essentially asking Hashem for is, we realize there's no logical reason why Hashem that you should feel compelled to accept our prayer. For everything that we've asked for up until now, all of these middle blessings, these, these 3 and 3, so these 13 middle blessings that we've asked for, or these 12 petitions that we've asked for, there's really no reason for you to grant them to us. But we ask that you accept it. And that was the whole theme of Shema Koleinu. It's sort of like a humble acknowledgement that, would you do us a favor and just accept what we've just asked for. What I wanted to do for just a few minutes today is take a look at the commentary in the Sidur HaGra, the Vilna Gaon's students who transcribed his commentary on the Siddur, and look at some finer points about the actual text of Shema Koleinu, which I think shed a lot of light on this idea. And if you want to follow along the text of the Shema Koleinu bracha, because as we mentioned, it's really the bracha where our sages tell us that you can personalize it the most. It really becomes the most personal of all of the paragraphs in the Amidah, where you have the opportunity to really express all of your wishes to Hashem, even when they don't seem to fall under any other category. It's like some examples, for health, you pray in Rifa'enu. For Parnasa, you pray in Barech Aleinu. You can add your own words before you get to the end of the bracha. But there's so many situations in life that don't fall under that category of good health and Parnasa. My child or my grandchild needs a shidduch. Okay, we know that shidduchim is such an important thing for so many of us. Or my sibling, please Hashem. That would be a good one for Shema Koleinu. If you're looking for situations to be repaired in relationships in your family or in friendships, that would be a good place to insert the prayer, Shema Koleinu. Hear our prayers, Hashem. So that's why we should spend a little bit more time on this, because it's really a catch-all bracha. If you notice, it starts off with the words Shema Koleinu, listen to our voice. Not listen to our words, listen to our voice. And that's an unusual way of asking Hashem to accept our prayers. Shema Tefilatenu, we would think, right? Why Shema Koleinu, listen to our voice? I mean, I don't even express my voice when I'm saying Shmon Esrei. I whisper, and my voice is not really audible. So what do we really mean when we're asking Hashem to Shema Koleinu? So that's the first question that the Gra undertakes. It's in source number 5 in the handout. I gave this out last week, but we just didn't do the section 5 on the sheet. So the Sidur HaGra says, Shema Koleinu. Perush, let's explain this. Sheyesh hebdel bein dibur lekol. In Hebrew, there is a distinction between the word dibur, which is speech, and kol, which is voice. Dibur hu lahatim et kavanato. When I use the word dibur, I use speech to express my intent. When I have something intelligent that's on my mind, I articulate the idea that I have using speech. Okay, very simple. The kol hu kol devarim hayotzim meiratzon ha'adam belo ta'am. But a voice is different. A voice is an expression of emotion, which may not be necessarily logical. It may not necessarily express an articulate idea, but it's an expression of either a pain or some other feeling that comes from deep within inside. So sometimes a voice doesn't have words attached to it.
Like the shofars.
Lishmoa kol shofar. Exactly. To hear the sound of the shofar. Well, the sound that we make when we're in pain, or the sound that we make when we're overjoyed, doesn't necessarily have words attached to it. And so when we ask Hashem to listen to our voice, we are acknowledging that perhaps what I'm saying doesn't really make much sense. But it's still something that comes from deep within, and it's something that emotionally I'm very attached to, this desire that I have. So therefore, let's see how he continues. He says, Kasher bahat tzivoy el Avraham, kol asher tomar elecha Sarah shema bekola. Right? God told Avraham, Avraham was very pained over the fact that, over the prospect of sending Hagar away, Hagar and Yishmael away. And what does God tell Avraham? Everything that Sarah tells you, Shema bekola, listen to her voice. Now, why not Shema eleha, listen to her? Why Shema bekola, listen to her voice in specifics? Okay? Gam shelo yashru be'einecha. Because even though, Avram, it doesn't make sense to you, like this is my wife, this is my son, you're telling me, Sarah, that I should send them away. What are you, crazy? I'm going to chase these people away from my home? Doesn't make any sense, and that's why Avram doesn't understand why he should do this. And Hashem says, I know you don't understand. I know that what Sarah is telling you is illogical to you, but listen to her voice anyway. That's what it means, why God said voice, because despite the fact that it's counterintuitive, you should do it anyway. That's what a kol is. A kol may not be logical, but it's sometimes the thing that you have to listen to. Okay? And he gives us several examples of this, the Vilna Gaon. And when God speaks to Yaakov, he says, the reason why I'm going to be watching over you is because Avram listened to my voice. Now, what did Hashem mean by that? He was saying, there were things that I told Avram to do that he didn't necessarily understand why, but he never faltered. When I told him to bring his son on the Akedah, he didn't understand why, but he did it anyway. So he listened to my voice. In other words, without hearing the logic in it, he just knew that this was what I wanted. So, and then he says, if we skip down to the next paragraph, Ma'aseh ha'avot shayu osin ratzon hamakom b'li tam, kein shilem Hashem livneihem, that just as our ancestors did Hashem's bidding without necessarily understanding why, God pays us back for that. And therefore, v'zehu shanu mitpalalim Shema Koleinu, gam she'en lanu zuchut asei imanu bizchut avoteinu. And basically what we're saying, Hashem, is we know what we're asking for may not be logical because we have no reason to ask for these things. We have no right to ask for the things that we're asking for because perhaps we don't deserve them. And it's not logical for you to entertain our requests. Why do I deserve to have good shidduchim for all my children? Why do I deserve to have parnasa? Why do I deserve to have shalom bayis? Why do I deserve to have these things? Am I such a great person? No, I'm not. And it may not be logical to request God that you entertain these things. But, I come from a long line of people who followed you even when they had no idea why. So I'm asking you to reciprocate. Even though what I'm saying may not make any sense based on my deservedness, Shema Koleinu nonetheless. And that's why we use the word kol. It's a beautiful thought. And then he continues, and he says, let's look at the next three words of the prayer. Shema Koleinu Hashem Elokeinu, Chus v'rachem aleinu. Now, chus and rachem are two verbs that we call upon Hashem to do upon us. Pity and be compassionate is the way the Art Scroll translates it. And the Gra says, Yesh hebdel ben chus v'rachem, ki teva hayotzer lachus al malachto. He says the word chus it's natural for a creator to have pity on his creation. So for example, Kamosha Amar Hashem Liona, as God said to Jonah, Ata chasta al hakikayona shelo amalta v'lo gidalta va'ani lo achus al nineveh ma'aseh yadai. Right, the climax of the story of Yonah is where Yonah is very upset about the fact that God takes away the kikayon plant, that it shrivels because it provided him with shade. And God says, you took such great concern on the kikayon plants that you never created, you never worked for it to grow. So don't you think that I should have chas, that I should be chas for the people of Nineveh? Why should I be so callous? They're my creation. I work so hard to create them, to raise them as a nation, to sustain them. V'chein al banim lo tachus einam. And Isaiah also uses the idea that for children you normally have compassion. V'chein ha'adam al kelav sha'asa amar ve'enachem al tachos al kelechem. And when it comes to things that I create with my own hands, I normally have a natural affinity towards those things and I want to preserve them. And therefore, that's what chus means. Chus means God, you created us. So even though we deserve perhaps nothing, by virtue of the fact that you created us and we're your products, that's what chus, we're asking you just to watch over us and make sure that nothing bad happens. And v'rachamim hu mitzad shiflut hamirucham. The word rachamim, compassion, is you look at the nebuchness of the other party. You look at that homeless person and you say nebuch. You look at the guy who's standing on the street corner in the middle of traffic with the cardboard sign, "Will work for food," or God bless, or whatever he writes, the handwritten cardboard sign, which you can buy at the dot. No, I'm just kidding. Kasher lo yirucham merov b'nei adam az yirachem alav Hashem. He says, when you look at a true nebuch of a person, and you know that most people will not have pity on that person, so Hashem will have pity on that person. Kamosha katuv v'richamti et lo ruchama. That God says, I have compassion even on those people who are not pitied by anyone else. V'chein b'sof harogez yavo rachamim, kamosha katuv berogez rachem tizkor. And like the prophet Habakkuk says, that after God's anger, God sort of calms down and he sort of feels rachmanis on those with whom he was previously angry. Ve'az me'atrehu chesed berachamim. V'zeu shanu mitpalalim chus, mitzad shanachnu hachomer v'ata yotzerenu, v'gam rachem aleinu mitzad shanachnu davka la'aretz bitneinu. So basically we're saying, Hashem, number one, chus. We're, of course, your handiwork. We're your product. Wouldn't you want us to just survive just because you made us and you don't want to see anything bad happen to your product? And the second thing is, have rachmanas on us, because no one else will. Especially, when we talk about the Jewish people, sometimes we feel all alone. And no one else is going to have rachmanas on you. So you, Hashem, we need you very much. Kuma Hashem ezrat alanu berachamim. And then finally we say, V'kabel berachamim uveratzon et tefilatein. Please accept with rachamim, that sense of pity or compassion, and with a desire, our prayer. So, Va'achar harachamim ka'av et ben yirtze otanu lahosif la'asot ritzon banav ma shelo bikshu me'ha'av. And therefore, biratzon, when we've asked Hashem to have rachamim, we've asked Hashem to be chas, and now we ask Hashem, please accept with ratzon, with desire, our prayers. And there we're basically saying, we're your children. And just like a parent wants to see their child happy, that's another reason why we're asking you, Hashem, to accept our prayers with ratzon, because we know that you have a natural affinity and desire to please your children. Ki tzorchenu merubim milavakesh lachein tekabel berachamim ma sheitpalalnu lefanecha V'tirtza otanu kefi sheyadata kol ritzoneinu. And furthermore, even the things that we haven't said explicitly, because sometimes we can't even articulate all of the things that we need in life. We forget, and it's not on our mind, and we don't have the power to be even able to mentally articulate all the things that we need. But you as a parent know what we need. There are many times in life when we look at our children and we see that they're lost. They don't even know how to express what they need. And it's up to us as parents to figure out not only what our children need, but how to make sure that they get it in the most dignified way. So that's also part of the word biratzon. Please accept with ratzon all of our prayers, even the things that we haven't articulated, but that you know that we need. So that's included in the prayer as well. And then, Kikel shomea tefilot v'tachanunim ata, you are a God who hears prayers and supplications. That's the next part of the Bracha of Shema Koleinu. And here the Gra explains the difference between tefillah and techina, because we use both words when we talk about God listening to the prayers and the supplications. What's the difference between a prayer and a supplication? You have two words. In English, they pretty much mean the same thing. But in Hebrew, no two words mean exactly the same. So what's the difference between the two? So he says, "Ha'hevdel bein tefillah letechinahu, ki tefillah hu lashon machshava v'cheshbon she'oseh ha'adam im kono." The word tefillah means something that's done with calculus, something where a person says, okay, A, B, C, kemo ra'o fanecha lo filalti. As Yaakov says to Yosef, I had never envisioned, I had never thought about ever being able to see your face. It's something that you calculate or think about in a logical format. Uchamochein seder kol habrachot, mipnei shata chonein la'adam dat, lachein v'chanenu meitcha de'a v'chulei, v'chein ata rotzeh b'tshuva lachein hashivenu, v'chein ki goel lachein re'ei ve'onyenu uge'alenu, v'chein kol habrachot. So therefore, when we review all what we've just said in the Shemona Esrei, we basically say, God, we've logically sequenced for you a series of petitions, a series of requests. We've said, you provide knowledge for all of mankind, therefore provide us with knowledge. You provide us with the ability to return, so please Hashem, help us return. You provide salvation for individuals, please save us. And similarly, for all of the blessings Shemona Esrei, we've logically set forth before you these petitions, your ability to provide us those petitions, and so forth. Umikol makom, gam shebanu b'ta'anat tzrichim anachnu lihitpalel b'kol tachanunim. But even though we've presented in a very logical and reasonable, rational way all of the things that we'd like to ask you for, Hashem, and why we think that you're the right party to provide us with those things, we also must surrender ourselves to the fact that our prayers are not necessarily sequenced logically, but rather they should be viewed as tachanunim. A tchina is something that may not fit a format of logic. It may not fit logically. Going back to the idea of kol, a kol is not necessarily something that makes sense. He says, "Kamo shekatav Shlomo, v'hitchananu elecha babayit hazeh," or "V'yiyu devarai eila asher hitchananti lifnei Hashem kerovim al Hashem Elokeinu." That Shlomo used the word tchina when he talked about the people coming to the temple that he had just built to pour out their hearts to God. A tchina is an articulated prayer, but it isn't necessarily organized properly. It isn't necessarily formatted in a logical format of sequence. Gam kisheshomea tefillah hu me'ayin im yetzei b'tachanunim, v'lo kishu me'ayin b'tefillah uboteach b'tuv ta'anotav u'zuchuyotav. And therefore, the difference between tefillah and tchina is tefillah is, this makes sense, Hashem, I'm trying to present to you the argument in a logical way. After all, knowledge comes from you, so please share some of your knowledge with me. Healing comes from you, so share some of that healing power with me. All of these things make sense, the way that we're presenting them. But when I acknowledge that what I've just presented to God is a techina, not a tefillah, I'm essentially surrendering myself to the fact that really nothing that I've said makes a lot of sense. Yes, I've presented a logical argument. Please, God, listen to me. But at the end of the day, there's really no reason for Hashem to listen to me. And that's the difference between tefillah and techina. I'm not going to focus on what I prayed for today and say, boy, I really had kavanah today, so Hashem should really listen to me. The Gemara says that one of the things that cause a person to have retribution brought upon them, there are a number of things that the Gemara says that if you do these things, God is going to scrutinize you and say, I'm not so happy with you. One of them is, for example, if you put yourself in a precarious situation. The Gemara's example of that is if you walk by a dilapidated wall that's about to collapse. They're going to scrutinize you from heaven and they're going to say, who do you think you are taking these kinds of risks? Like if you drive without a seatbelt. That's another example. I mean, it's a similar kind of thing where God, you're actually evoking God's ire. Because God is saying, what kind of person do you think you are? What gives you the right to be a daredevil? Do you really think you're such a tzaddik that you're going to be protected from these reckless kinds of behaviors? In the same way, the Gemara says, iyun tefillah. If a person looks back upon the prayer that he has just presented and he says, wow, that was a really good Shemon Esrei that I just did. I'd be really surprised if something amazing doesn't happen to me because I just put in a really good 7 minutes of davening. Yeah? So if a person's attitude is that, so the Gemara says, watch out, because you've just brought divine upset against you. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. So rather, in retrospect, you have to acknowledge that I didn't do tefillah, which is a logical presentation of my needs and arguments, but rather techina. I'm just basically a beggar at the door. I deserve nothing. And then the last paragraph he wants... Yeah, sure.
Does that apply to other mitzvahs that you do also? Let's say someone says, wow, I just gave $1 million to tzedakah. Aren't I great? Does that also bring scrutiny, or any other mitzvah that you do, or they just say it regarding tefillah?
They say it specifically in regard to tefillah. I mentioned last week that if a person says, Selazu litzdaka al menat sheyichyeh b'ni, I hereby donate the following coin in the pushka, but I do so in the zuchus that my son should have a refuah, this is a tzaddik gamor. This is a complete tzaddik.
No, but that's like saying you're doing like quid pro quo, but I'm saying whatever mitzvah you do, can a person ever say, I'm proud of myself that I did this mitzvah well, or is that a bad thing?
Well, you can take pride in the fact that you're gratified that you did something good in life. That's a good thing. You're supposed to take pride in the fact that you did good stuff. It's a question of, do I have a right to have expectations from God to pay me back?
Oh, I see.
Right? So if I view my prayer as tefillah, and therefore God, look at what I just did. I mean, I can't believe you wouldn't listen to what I just said. You've got to listen to it because it was articulated so well, and so I was so logical in the way that I presented my arguments. That's called a negative type of iyun tefillah, where you're not supposed to look back on your prayer and say, wow, I deserve to be answered based on what I just did. And they say that specifically when it comes to prayer, because why should God listen to me at all?
So the only time you can make that kind of a deal with Hashem is with tzedakah. You can't say, Hashem, look, I'm hosting 20 guests for Shabbos. In return, could you do whatever?
Well, no. So specifically in prayer where that's wrong to look back and say, I deserve to have my prayers answered. With other mitzvot, you can actually negotiate and say, Hashem, please, in exchange, please do X, Y, and Z for me. But you have to remember that the reason why the Gemara says that that's acceptable is because a Jew never has regret for having invested time and resources in doing a mitzvah. Meaning that a Jew a Jew's attitude is, I'm doing this because I want Hashem to pay me back with something that is really important to me, a refuah or parnas or whatever it is. But my attitude is, as a Jew, is that no matter what happens, I'm glad I did the mitzvah. That's the assumption. But there is one of the vidoys that we say, is where there's a line in the vidoy where we say, Ve'ein ani toheh chas v'shalom ala rishonot. I don't have any remorse about of the mitzvahs that I've done in the past. Even if you don't ever give me anything in my petitions, I have no regrets for having done all of the mitzvahs that I've done. Okay? Okay, so, and yeah, we actually say that in the Hataras Nedarim before Rosh Hashanah. And then, so the last thing that we'll look at today is Umilafanecha Malkeinu Rekam Al Tishivenu. Please, Hashem, don't turn us away empty-handed. Rekam is empty-handed. Okay? And he says, the reason why we insert those words, please don't turn us away empty-handed, is Ki kolat filot mivi'im lifnei pamalya shalmala, asher yishamshu kadmoye shehem chai elef ribo. Gets a little bit Kabbalistic on us, and he tells us that there are 18 myriad, which is 180,000 angels that are part of God's retinue, his entourage in heaven. And whenever we say Shmona Esrei, our prayers are brought before this huge entourage of angels, together with Hashem. Lachein chai brachot, and that's why we have 18 blessings in the Amidah. Vehema mivi'im lefanav yitbarach, and they are brought before Hashem. Lachein anachnu mitpalalim gam shelo nimtza zakai lifnei hasarim b'tfilatenu ava milafanecha malkeinu rekam al tishivenu. You know, usually prayers have to get through, a petition. When you give it to a mortal king, you send a letter to the White House or to Sussex. Is it Sussex Avenue? Your letter doesn't get straight to the president. There's usually about a dozen people that will vet the letter before it gets to the president's table. So we're acknowledging that our prayers have to go through a gauntlet of underlings before they get to you, Hashem. Some of them may feel that our prayers are unworthy, but milafanecha rekam al tishivenu. But eventually they will get to you, Hashem, and we ask that even if they are rejected by lesser, the lesser beings, that you Hashem will never send us away empty-handed. Others may, others who look at our prayers more logically, less compassionately, more coldly, they may feel that this is way too much for this person to ask. But milafanecha, but from you, Hashem, we are both confident and we request that you don't turn our prayers away empty-handed. Okay, those are just a few insights into the Shema Koleinu. Once again, this type of analysis of the prayer, I think, adds additional texture and richness to what a person should be thinking about when they're davening. A lot of thought went into the actual choice of words in these kinds of these prayers, and so these are some good things to think about when you say Shema Koleinu, and you ask for the things that would make your life so much better